trees were very delicate. It still was before the drought had broken, so things were quite dry. After the last 12 months, it's been potted up in here, and I've just kept it. And it's I've made a few mistakes, which I'll pass on to you, because if I tell you, you won't make them. On this tree here, it grew quite rapidly. So you can see the ugliness of the wire that has damaged that. The future, I think, we'll leave it another 12 months in this pot, and then we'll repot it with some smaller ones, maybe add 2 or 3 here, and put them into a nice big bowl.
Daniel and I, we put together this Trident Maple group. As it being February in Trident Maples, it's probably not the best time to repot them, as you can see by these 2 guys here, which didn't really take too kindly to being repotted. They don't like being repotted because they have a bit of a dormant cycle at the middle of summer, and if you disturb them, it sort of forces them into a growth period. And because we had a hot summer last year, the tree roots obviously couldn't handle it. It's usually not advisable to do a full repot of maples anyway, only at the start of spring, really, when the buds start to appear. Otherwise, these guys haven't gone too bad. The ones they were a bit slow to start off with. They have started to shoot off again. They had a little bit of a last minute run, probably 5 or 6 weeks ago, and now they're just starting, the stems of the leaves are now just starting to colour up, so it looks like they're about to go into their autumn colours.
Would you consider replacing the 2 that have died?
Yeah, replacing the 2.
During the winter period?
Come the start of spring or...
Probably a bit big for that, aren't they?
I was going to suggest, have we still got tridents from left over from the show? Would it be possible for Jason to pop over?
They're too big for that?
They're too big for that?
I think so. And then a good look at it, but I think the ones I've got are just too big for that.
Too tall or too thick?
Both.
Both. Okay. In that case,
Could I have a look at it?
well, yeah, we've got a nursery call coming up. We'll keep an eye out for some to replace that.
Yeah, so. Could be rewired, or could be wired down. I'll let it go to recover. It's had a bit of dieback from some of the main stems here, but we've got some new straight leaders here, which can be used to grow the trees up, get a bit of growth, get a bit of activity going down the bottom here. Some of them have shot off quite well down the bottom. This one here is fairly strong towards the top.
Would you wait until spring before you actually do the pruning?
Now's too late. Yes. If you trim it now, it'll start to bleed. You could seal it off with a bit of sealer, but you're better off just to wait.
Yeah. What sort of container do you think you'd like to see them in?
I'd like to see it on a slab of some sort.
Yeah.
Even just a curved, like a slight curved one.
Okay.
Almost like a onion granite bowl sort of thing. That would look really nice. Don't know about the rock. I mean, if you can find a better rock, it can always be changed.
Okay.
Especially if it's going with a granite bowl, you probably want something to suit that and like that. Sometimes you get it like this one's a bit more yellow than what this one here is, or it might have a little bit more serration on the end of the leaves. These ones are actually quite well matched, but sometimes you can get them, you get a tray of them, and there could be a complete different varieties in them. So you'll get some that have, instead of the serration like these guys have got, they're nice and smooth, right? Or a lot smaller leaf too. So.
I thought that we'd do something that is all Victorian. Okay, so the slate comes from the mountains in West Gippsland, up in the just below the snow country. The mallee stump comes from the mallee country up a place called Patchiwalla, just south of Mildura. And the trees themselves, coastal tea trees, came from the Anglesey forest on bonsai dig. So we wanted to do something that put all of those things that we could find locally together and see what we could do for a group. To me, I think it's turned out reasonably well. It's got the flavour of the coastal flow where the coastal tea tree would live. If you go down along the coast road from basically Barwon Heads down to Warrnambool, climb into the dunes, you can see very similar scenes like this: the outcrops, the wind-blown tea trees. When you're going to do something like this, it probably is a good idea to research the information. And for something like this, a combination of two books. We've got Australian native trees, so if you went to something like Dorothy Koroshoff's book, you get all the information for your trees. But if you go to Cato's book, he tells you how to put the groups together in a nice artistic form. So by putting two books together, you can get the information you need. So sometimes when you're reading through one of the books, you're gaining information. Not all of the information you're going to need is in the one book, so sometimes you have to go searching for it. So really good idea. If you want to do something, you're planning something like this takes a plan over 6 or 9 months as you're thinking it up. Research the books, use the library, and by getting a combination of books, you can get a lot more information rather than just taking one book and reading it and thinking all the ideas may be in it. So that was how that came about. When we did this, it was really good time for natives. It was February. Probably last year was a hotter February than we traditionally get here, but still a reasonably good time. A lot of the wiring was done last year, the initial wiring. Wiring was taken off again in about September, October, I think I took it off. We lost one tree, and it's probably more my fault than the tree's fault. We tried to use a hollow that was in the mallee root to hold the tree. I didn't use enough muck to hold that in, and the tree's died because it's dried out. The soil's washed away and it's dried out. Knowing that can happen on a group, so any of these, there's a couple dead here. So on any group, you're doing a lot of work in a few hours. You can't sometimes get all of the work you need. So it's always a nice idea to have some backups. And just happened to be down the Anglesey Forest, kicking along the road. And so I've got a few of these that we can use, and I won't do it tonight, it's too late in the year, so I've missed the opportunity. We probably should have done this, and to do a repot, we probably, for these ones, it would have been February, maybe last month we got away with it, but I don't really want to chance it now. But when did you replace that one? And we'll do that October, November. I'll put that in probably before Christmas, try and get it back into some sort of shape. You can see that this one's been wired, so we can do lots of things with it. We can basically do anything with the younger wood on these trees. As they get older, they get a bit more brittle. You can't do too much with them. And the other thing that you can really get, well, that tree there, I don't know if you can see it, but if you can see the bends in that tree was on the side of the road, and I don't know how many cars drove over it on the edge of the Anglesey Forest going to the power station there. But they're all natural bends. That was dug out of the ground with all those bends. So you can just crawl on the side of the road on your hands and knees with a little pick and shovel. You can get some good stuff. So one of those, and probably I'm thinking that one, because of that movement in it, will sit nicely into this shape here coming up to this point. So it's already sort of got plenty of shape to it. So, some more work to be done. Obviously, this is the first year of this potting, so most of the year has just been about making sure that we kept the trees alive. I mean, that's the first thing. Leave the wire, let it set, take it off, and all I've done with this is really just lightly trimmed it as it's been grown to try and keep it in a reasonable shape. One of the things that you can't do with these is take all the leaves right off, as you do with some trees. You have to leave a couple of leaves on for it to keep going, so this will just keep budding back if you leave a couple of leaves. And on the show bench tonight, there's a couple of these in another mallee root. And if you look at those, I might just try and grab it, because you can see, but when you work with them after a bit of time, you can get that denseness to them. and that'll give a really nice tree effect to that forest. You work on them, you get nice tight foliage pads. So what we're going to do with this is, it's got the windswept look. We failed in a couple of places to maintain that. This front tree here has grown straight up basically, and it really is out of place for the group. It's also sitting a bit of away from where it should be. It really should be coming out of the, it's basically hidden behind the outcrop, it's grown up. Once it's reached the top, then the wind's blown it. We haven't got that effect yet, so we've got to do some work with this. And what we'll do is we'll drill into here, we'll do it tonight anyway. We'll put a lead ball in there, hold the wire, tie it back, and then we can wire this and twist it down and get the shape into that one. So that'll give it much more flow. Replace that one sometime next year. And now the work starts on getting the foliage pads in the right direction and getting the sparseness to them that you need to get that effect.
Can you describe the, you say lead ball to hold the...
Yep.
How does that work?
Anybody who's got a father, son or daughter or mother who's interested in fishing will have tins of lead balls sitting around for sinkers. Right? So these are really good. They're soft, they're spread, they're malleable. So when you drill a hole and you want to hold your wire in, put the lead ball in, knock it in, and it'll fill the hole up. You can put a bit of muck or something over the top of it, cover the hole up. Really good, effective way of holding wire into stone or into mallee roots.
You don't run the risk of lead poisoning your plant?
Well, there's not enough lead in it,
Okay.
and it's not really in contact with the roots, so it won't really affect it that much. Yeah.
You talked about putting it in the actual plant or in the mallee root?
Sorry?
In the mallee root.
In the mallee root.
In the actual tree or in the...
Into the mallee root. So I'll drill a hole into the mallee root, put the wire in, fix it with a lead ball, and that'll hold that tree back until it resets. Okay? Bertie was talking about using slabs before. This is a slab. It's got muck for the walls, and it is a bit of an effort to keep it moist and stop it from cracking through the summer. It can be done. I mean, that's held together reasonably well. There's a couple of small cracks in it, but you know that's been right through the whole summer. And,
Yeah, the moisture that you need to maintain your wall, does that affect your actual trees?
Well, it doesn't. These, you know, despite what we think sometimes about, you know, natives not living in a wet environment, natives survive on a lot of water because they've got very deep roots down. So they can be quite thirsty anyway. So you need to keep the water up to them. And they're in soil here that's probably not much more than an inch or so deep. So constant watering of the trees through the summer, just the runoff water keeps them up wet enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
That is something you should remember. Most Australian natives, when they're grown in the ground, they send their roots down a large number of feet, down to the subsurface water, to the artesian basins. So they have the toes in the artesian basins. They drink a lot. When they're in pots, they don't get the access to that sort of water, so you've got to keep the water up to them. More Australian natives have died because people thought, oh yes, they're drought tolerant, they don't need much water, they don't want much water. In fact, they actually need a lot more than you realise. I would also say that Australian natives are one that take a bit of practice to work with. You need to try and lose quite a few before you actually get the knack of keeping them alive. They're not something I would suggest for beginners. So, anything else, Hugh?
No, it's just the next phase of its life when we can accept that it's there and just let it grow, or we can work on it year on year and make it into a much better grouping. And my intention is to try that. Yes.
So what's the game plan with the replacement? How are you going to keep the next one alive when you replace the tree?
It's a good question. There's a couple of ways we can do it. One of those trees, I'll go back one step. When I dig out the Australian natives, I leave them as much root as I can for the first year. After the first year, I cut off half the taproot, and then it gives it time to put secondary roots out. One of those, I haven't taken the taproot off, so I've got some quite long roots. So we've got one option is to put it in here with long enough roots that will come down into the soil here. Okay? So that'll keep the taproot bedded in the soil. So that's one option. The second option is we've got a nice groove in through here that we can put the roots in and fill it with muck and try and keep it as moist as we can. And I think that will survive in there. The fault that I made last time was by trying to get it right into that curve there, which is where I wanted it. Its roots weren't long enough and they just dried over and it died, so I can't really blame the tree for that one.
Thank you.
When I dug them out, I took lots of wet newspaper and plastic bags with me, took all the soil off, wrapped them up, kept them nice and moist so they didn't have any chance to dry out, took them home straight into potting mix. One thing you can't do with them at that, because they're very young, you can't let them dry out at all. There's no residual moisture in them. Remembering that these all grew in the stone gravel on the side of the road, that's what makes them so good to pick up, and that's why so many of them survive, is because they haven't had the chance in that road base to put the taproots right down. The taproots have more or less gone along the surface, so by following them along, you can chisel them out and keep most of the root structure. The problem is when if they're in softer soil and the root's gone straight down, you can't get down far enough to get the secondary root system, so you've basically cut it off, and that's why a lot of your Australian mattas die when you leave them already grown. Always bonsai mix. Always bonsai mix. Yeah. Again, you want as many roots as possible, as quick as you possibly can. It's the gravel and bonsai mix that makes the roots spread and split as it hits the stones. So the more stones you got in, the more development of the roots you're going to get. So straight into bonsai mix. Yeah.
As I said, Australian natives are fairly tough. If you want something that's really easy to look after, my best suggestion is the Chinese elm. And I might add that I didn't lose a single tree of this group over the summer, where everybody else lost at least one. That's purely and simply because they're so tough.
She's a better gardener.
No, it's because the plants are really tough. I didn't really look after them all that much. My group is fairly tight. All the trees started out as root cuttings. These were bought from the same nursery that the other ones were bought from. Because they started out as root cuttings, most of the branches came from one point on the trunk and come up in what we call a broom style. So almost every single one of these is growing in a broom style. My intention is simply to keep training them in a broom style. I left the secateurs down there, didn't I? Hang on. Just want to show you something. Broom styles are really easy to look after. That'll do. What I do is I grab the branch, pull them all together, and chop them off. Just like that. By doing that, by bringing them together and chopping them off, they spread out and they actually get a round dome. So what I want to do is develop different levels of round domes on all these trees. They haven't been done recently, so it doesn't hurt to do them again. The main tree, which is the one in the prominent position, which is this one, should be taller than all the rest. And I will taper them down so that it actually basically develops into a triangle shape. But I do want to keep certain ones shorter. I've noticed that this one, I've left one branch too tall. I've pruned it, but it's gone up too high, so I'm taking off now. Bring it back into the little dome, that way. And then develop the same thing with all these other trees. The one at the front here, although it's a dominant one, I want it a little bit shorter than it is. I love doing this. This will not hurt the tree at all. With one like this branch here, it actually doesn't want to be a broom style. It's actually growing unlike the others, it's growing as a informal upright with multiple branches. Because of that, I may have to just encourage it in that informal style. But you can see I've already made a difference in the look of it just by trimming it the way I have. With some of these, you may actually have to cut it a bit shorter, and some of them you may have to leave them grow a bit and just gradually prune them back and then let them grow higher to keep them dense. We want thick, dense clouds of foliage on this group. I have made this funny looking thing, which is my little creek. I'm not really happy with that. I don't know whether I'll continue to use it or just make a gravel creek in the middle there. You can see it looks a bit different without it, but it gives you the idea. Without that, you can actually see the exposed roots on these trees, and that was what I was aiming for. The impression of trees that are growing beside a river, with the roots where the water's been washed away the soil around the roots and exposed them every time it floods. So that's the impression I'm trying to build with this group. And I think it's working reasonably well. I've deliberately left a lot of the roots exposed. Because these were root grass, basically they took a piece of root from a tree. When they pruned the tree back to put into a pot, they cut the roots off, the big thick roots, and then they put those roots into a pot and let them grow on, and they shot away. With the Chinese elms, they grow really, really easily from roots. So if you've got one at home and you have to trim off some of the thick roots because they're too thick and you want nice fibrous roots to keep the plant healthy, keep those thick roots, stick them in a pot, leave at least an inch of the root above the surface, and it will actually produce new growth from that surface, and you'll have a new little tree. If the root is nice and twisty, you can get a beautiful twisty trunk or a cascade from those roots. So this one I will probably go for an oval shaped pot. It just suits that style. It's fairly dense. It will end up having the trees arching over the creek, so there will be almost like an arch of foliage there, as you see over street trees growing over the road. That's what the effect will be. Anyway, so I'll put him back in there for the time being.
How long will you keep it in that pot, Maxine?
Again, for another 12 months. The roots are fairly well established on this now, and everything's growing really vigorously. But it doesn't hurt to make sure that all those roots are interlocking, and so that when I move it out of the pot, I can move it as one big, huge piece, not lots of little pieces that fall apart. So I want all those roots to be interlocking and growing together really well, so that I can move it as one whole piece into its new pot. Any questions?
Is it your sculpting with the polystyrene and turpentine?
No, this one actually, I don't like it because it hasn't been turped. I've just roughly shaped it. I wanted it something quick for the meeting, so I just roughly shaped it and roughly painted it. What I may do is trim off the painted bits and put turps on it, give a more natural look to it. This one doesn't, because of the way I've done it, it doesn't actually hold water. And I want one that would like to hold water. So I'll do something to seal the inside so that it will hold water, if I just decide to keep it there.
Is the gravel version a lot more work? Because each time you have to repot, you have to redo.
The gravel version is actually less work.
Okay.
It's just simply a matter of getting a different colour gravel, perhaps a few larger pebbles to act like large stones or river pebbles or boulders, and just shaping a stream around there like a dry stone creek.
What colour would you use? Like white stones or?
I would probably use something that will show up a little bit more than the brown ironstone pebbles that I've used here on the surface. White pebbles would do the trick, but they don't look very creek-like. So I'm not sure yet. I might actually just use sand and then a few pebbles around the side. So yellow sand would probably do the trick.
Okay.
So that one's planted in a hollow that goes almost all the way down. This one here goes down about so far. Now down to there. This little mondo grass, the whole goes all the way down to the bottom. I put as much soil in as I could get in there, but it kept going down, kept going down, kept going down. So I don't know how much it's got there. It's got a bit. This one here is in a hollow that goes down to about there. So they're all actually grown in pots, more or less in pots that are almost the size of a 6-inch pot. So they've got plenty of soil to grow, and they will keep growing fairly vigorously. They haven't looked back since I put them in there. They haven't gone yellow. They haven't showed any sign of stress or strain. They're very heavily wired, and if you come up closer later on, you'll see how heavy that wire is. My idea is that you've got a rock, wind comes from one direction and blows the things over and down over the rock. So most of our wind comes from the west and north. This will be the west and northern side of the rock. It's grown over this way and more or less blown it inland. Slightly more sheltered here, so a few grasses have managed to survive. Okay.
Do you allow for drainage in those pockets, or are they?
I haven't actually allowed for drainage, but there's enough holes in the whole construction for water to drain out.
Okay.
Even for this top section, I know there are holes underneath where the water can drain out. But so far, and the soil I've used is very, very porous. I did put a little bit of copper peat in with the soil, this mix, just to hold a bit extra water, because the foam, even though it is foam and it's fairly well insulated, it will dry out a little bit and it will get a bit hotter in the hot summer day. The diorama is there to indicate that this is where it sits, where it lives. The sea washes in over the hollow and up onto the rocks. Nothing's down terribly low because it gets burnt by the sun and by the salt spray.